Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host and husband, Francois. We're on to Game 6, where the Liberty go on the road to face the Minnesota Lynx. This was another tough loss for the Liberty and a dominant win for Minnesota with a score of 84-67. Francois, where do we begin with this game?
Where do we begin? I mean, I guess it's kind of easy. The defense of the Liberty. I mean, we were expecting a much better performance after a tough loss against Chicago at home with some defensive lapses. So we were definitely expecting something better. And Sandy Brandello also said she expected better effort in this game. And unfortunately, we didn't see any of that. And it was strange because it felt like a team that just met and is just starting to play together when, you know, this core group has been together for a year and a half. They went to the WNBA final last year, and when we were sort of looking back at the game after just to sort of analyze this thing, like the miscommunication on defense was very shocking. Well, what did you make of that?
It's frustrating, honestly. I mean, this was the game I was concerned about.
Yeah, you said it, and you were right.
I was concerned about it. Just seeing Minnesota in previous games, I was a little worried for the Liberty, but I thought if the Liberty beat Chicago, this may be their first loss. I was hoping that it wasn't, though, because I was like, well, I think they could go toe-to-toe. But because of the loss with Chicago and what I saw in that game, I got a little more worried for the Liberty. And so I was hoping that they would stick toe-to-toe. And at first, you know, yes, they had lapses on defense a bit, but they were sticking in there offensively. It was
kind of like a back and forth.
It was just a back and forth. And I thought, okay, if they could just stick in there back and forth and keep doing it. But then at the end, towards the end of the first quarter, going into the second quarter, it just went downhill. They didn't score for almost...
Right, it was like 7 or 8 minutes.
8 minutes from the 3-minute mark in the first quarter all the way into the 5-minute mark into the second quarter. Not one person scored. And that was troubling. That already told me, like, this game is going to be crazy.
I mean, for a top team to not score for 8 minutes, that's a very long time. That is very worrying.
It was worrying. I mean, they came back, obviously, in the second quarter. They had a blitz at the end of the second quarter, which I thought, okay, we got life. Stewie sort of took over. They, you know, even for Brandello, I give her props for changing the lineup. Yeah. And it was Stewie, Fiebich, Vandersloot, who else was there? Niara Savali.
As always.
I think Benaja was there as well. And that was the crew that had a blitz in the last part of the second quarter to really get this game going and bring them back. Because I think they were down by, 20 at one point? And brought them back to within single digits. And so, I mean, the miscommunication on defense, the miscommunication all over the floor, really. I mean, it happened on both sides. Shots not going down for everyone, basically. It was tough to watch. They look rushed. They just didn't look in rhythm. Once you're not communicating on the court, it's just kind of like this individual ball, like your individual play. You're not playing together. You're not playing as a team. And you could see it, like the decision making was just poor. And it did look like they reverted back to early last year when they all first got together and not knowing what to do. And again, you got JJ frustrated getting into foul trouble very early on as well.
Wow, I mean, it's almost like they were sort of making the gamble that, we're going to let some people on the Minnesota team take shots. Mm-hmm. And it completely backfired. If we analyze the defense, first of all, the drop coverage drove me insane. When you go under the screen...
Yeah. They tell you never go under the screen.
Yeah, never go under the screen. And they got, killed off of that so many times. Mm-hmm. Whether it was McBride, Alana Smith, who also scored a couple of threes. Nafisa Collier had a bank shot. Courtney Williams had a couple of mid-range. And Natasha Eiderman And it was interesting because you mentioned that as soon as she got on the floor,
it was over for Sabrina.
It completely changed the dynamic, and
it changed the dynamic.
And Sabrina didn't know where to go on defense.
Yeah.
She was kind of like double teaming, but then sort of like not knowing where to go next. Once she left her assignment, it was tough to watch.
I would have to say that because obviously Natasha Heidemann, when she played for Connecticut last year, she was tough. She was real tough and was a headache for the Liberty last year. She was a real headache, and she's quick. And the minute she got in this game, everything went left. In particular for Sabrina, I would have to say, like, the defense was not good all around.
Yeah, like, let's not point out just Sabrina.
It's not just her, but I will say it was very glaring. It was very telling that I know, as we've seen in previous games, that she has been working on her defense. She has been working on these shots. She has been working on driving into the paint. She's been and you see it. You see it in the previous games. But in this game, Natasha Heidemann brought a whole different level that I'm just not, at this point, maybe Sab wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
And I don't think it took her by surprise. I just don't think she was ready for this. And so it was very telling just to see her leave assignments, to have Sabrina leave her assignment, which left people open, and those people end up getting that shot. You see the buckets go down. You would see her kind of leave one assignment, not sure where to go. Niara come to help. KT would come to help, but then somebody's left open because Sabrina didn't switch. It was very hard to watch because it just looked like somebody that didn't know where to be. And also, when you're not communicating, that also just heightens everything if you don't know where to be on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, because we also have to give props to Minnesota.
Yeah.
It has to be probably one of the most underrated team this season. And Felicia Courtney had said, like, at the beginning of the season that, they always count us out and always
count them out.
They always put us ninth on the projected rankings for the season, which is like the first place out of the playoff race. But they have made some very smart move in the offseason. Alana Smith and Courtney Williams that were playing for the Chicago Sky. You've got, obviously Kayla McBride, continued to rises and, was the MVP in the EuroLeague. And Felicia Courtney that, was in the conversation for MVP last year and has been phenomenal so far this season. So they have a lot of versatile players, a lot of versatile bigs that are very quick on offense and defense.
Very quick, yeah.
And they made their life very difficult for the New York Liberty.
But I also think Natasha Heidemann is going to be the X factor for them because she's even faster. I mean, she blocked Sabrina at one point.
Oh, yeah.
It was... It was partially a clinic, I would say, on what you should do on defense. And it was just tough. It was really hard to watch. Now, yes, they're 4-2, so we're early in the season. But I do think this is a game they really need to look at because for me, looking at Minnesota, I would have never put Minnesota, project them 9th ever for this season. With everyone that they got on that team, I personally had them top 5. I mean, because those players are McBride. There were times they left her wide open, and I'm thinking to myself, like, she is a guaranteed 3 every time.
She
is a walking bucket. Like, that is one person you do not leave by herself. You never do that.
And, we were recording on the Sunday, and Minnesota just beat Atlanta, where Kayla McBride had a crazy performance. She was
she missed one shot.
She missed one shot and got 30 points or something. So she's balling at the moment, and the Liberty were definitely not prepared. But as you mentioned, in the second quarter, there was a bit of hope from the Liberty because not everything was negative. And you felt more sense of urgency from the team. The way they were trapping on defense, they were way more aggressive than what they were in the first quarter and in the first part of the second quarter. Made a tremendous comeback, and all of a sudden, like, it was a 4-point game at halftime. Part of the third quarter, at some point, they tied the game, if I'm not mistaken. So you were really hopeful. The bright spot, as you said, Leonie Fiebich, that had the best game so far with the Liberty. She looked more like, at ease, more in shape, less fatigue. And they set really good plays for her to give her, like, open space to take 3-point shots. And she's a very good 3-point shooter. So I felt like it was interesting the way they set up plays for her. Good connection with Niara Sabali, the German connection. So that was good. Vandersloot was quick on the steals, which initiated fast breaks for the Liberty. And what I liked was that someone like Breanna Stewart wasn't sailing for threes, and she was aggressive in attacking the basket. And that was one thing that I noticed also from the Liberty. That was the second time, because that was a problem with Chicago. The lack of ball movement, which is their bread and butter, and how they would try to settle for too many threes. And in a night like this, or should I say early afternoon, where nothing was getting in, like, I felt like they kind of lack the drive to, like, kind of change their offense and attack the basket more. I mean, Vandersloot did that pretty well in that game.
I mean, to me, it was crazy just to see, obviously when Stewie got the ball or when JJ got the ball, they were getting doubled and sometimes triple teamed. So it was going to be tough. But to see Sloot be able to cut and get to the basket and have little floaters and use her speed. And I was like, all right, there is ways to get to the basket, guys. We got to make plays where somebody can get to the basket. And even to see, like, Benijah seemed a bit uncertain of her shot selection. There were a few times I thought she was really about to take it to the basket, and then all of a sudden she switched and she passed it to settle for a three. And it's like, you're right there. You're right at the basket. Be aggressive. Maybe you'll get a foul even if the shot didn't go down. It's like Minnesota's getting the foul calls. They're going to the line, like, because they're being aggressive. They're driving in the paint, hoping to get, even if they make the bucket, they might get a foul call too. It's like the shot selection, the decision making on the floor, it's not helpful. And I think for the Liberty too. Yes, we go to the games, the home games. We see them talking to each other. We see them, pumping each other up. Or if somebody is frustrated, they huddle up, they talk, they encourage, they push each other. But they're missing a dog on the court. I know offensively, JJ, she is a monster in the paint. Like, she is. Like, offensively, she is aggressive. She even, sometimes on defense. But when it breaks down, it breaks down. Like, if Benijah is not having a great game, it's almost like they don't know what else to do on defense.
I mean, that's what we always said, like, in all the podcasts, like, the Liberty would go as far as Benijah or Lainey Hamilton will go. Yeah. And those past two games, she hasn't had good performances.
And those things are going to happen, though. Like, okay, like, she may not have a good game, but somebody has to pick her up, though. Like, it can't just be her. Like, I do think she's a dog on defense for sure. But you need a vocal leader. Like, I know Stewie's a leader. I know they talk. I know they get on each other. We see it. We see it when we are at the games. But they need it's another tone of leader that they need.
But it is very interesting what you're saying, because after the game, when, was scrolling through social media to see what people had to say about, this game or the New York Liberty in general. And, a lot of people brought back the comment that Kelsey Plum made that was quite controversial during the final. About the fact that, they're not a team, that we are, that, we have that connection that they don't. And, I think that we said it in the podcast that followed that comment that we felt that it wasn't true. Like, you don't get to the final and beat tough teams like the Mystics and the Connecticut Sun from last season if not together and united and gel. But it is true that there is something missing. That's why a lot of people have said in the comments, like, they can't necessarily point it out, but there's like something is missing in this team.
It's hard to tell, like, because even when I don't want to compare them to the Aces. I really, really don't. Because we watched the game. It might have been the first game this season for the Aces. Maybe. It might have been their first game because they've only played like 3 games anyway. But they were down. And they weren't down by much. But they weren't playing to the level that we're used to seeing of the Aces. And you saw them get into the huddle. And Asia, the way she spoke commanded everyone's attention. I am watching this on television, and I could tell just by the way she was talking to them in that huddle. You couldn't hear anything she was saying. Yeah. You just saw the camera pan, and you could tell she was getting in there with her team to rally them. And it wasn't like they were down by 10 or 20 points or anything. They just weren't playing to the level that they're used to playing. They were probably being a bit, first, second game, you're kind of complacent with stuff. And she was snapping them right back into place. That is something that I wonder if the Liberty have. Like, it may not be something we see. I don't know what goes on in the locker room. Maybe they have those kind of talks. But I do feel like they need something. Almost like a Witherspoon. Even though Teresa Witherspoon is coaching Chicago.
Oh, man.
You need somebody that... And it may not have to be a player. It could be a coach. I don't know. But you need somebody that is just... There is something missing. And I don't know if that's the right way. Because, Brondello knows her team. They know each other. Maybe there's a certain way that they like to communicate that comes across best for them. But I do feel like in this game, you need somebody that is going to light a fire.
Well, that's also the other thing that often came up in the comments on social media. A dog, like they need a dog, like that someone that can like you said, like an Asia that can really rally the team or like shake them up, like when things are getting a little too slow. But yeah, I think that you definitely have like leaders on the court by the way they play,
right?
But not necessarily vocal leaders. Now, we're obviously not on the court with them. We are fairly close during home games, so we do see Breanna Stewart, Sabrina, that try to encourage their team, or, we see Sabrina taking the lead, with 3-pointers, attacking the basket. She's very, passionate.
And she encourages her teammates. She was mic'd up, and she encouraged her teammates. She was getting them back in the game. I've seen her even when she's not mic'd up. Like, when they were down, against Chicago, you saw her on the sideline, talking to everybody, really trying to push. You saw that. I don't know what it is, though. There's something else missing.
Yeah, I think it's when things get tough, who's going to be the person to, kind of take over and be, carrying the team.
But carry them and make the right decision.
Yeah.
It's one thing to get the team pumped up. It's a whole other thing where you got to make the right decisions now on the court. You gotta communicate. Even though somebody could light a fire under you, you can still go out and not communicate and do dumb stuff, and not pay attention. And so it's both. You need that communicator, you need that person, and they have to have the right. It's a tone. It's a tone of voice is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Just in the way that somebody can really light a fire under you. And, it doesn't have to be crazy. It's just, something's missing. Something's definitely missing.
Because now I'm thinking where is this game against Minnesota where they didn't score for 8 minutes. But now I'm also thinking that traumatizing game 4 in the WNBA finals of last year, where the Liberty, at some point they were up by 12. We were, we were commanding that game. And then the third quarter, like, everything kind of blanked out, like where they just could not score. Obviously, the Aces, improved their defense, and Asia was starting to take over. But like, there was a long amount of time where the Liberty just could not score, and I feel like it happens way too many times with that team. And that's something that they're gonna have to work on. Whether watching videos, talking, together during practice, but it's gonna have to be something that has to be sort of rectified or changed if they want to have a chance to get the title.
I do think that's the problem within the leagues, like. And I say this not just the WNBA, you see it in the NBA, where a lot of teams tend to settle for threes. Like, everybody wants to shoot the three ball. Everybody wants to make space for the three ball.
That's the new way of playing basketball.
Yeah, but when they're not going in, when the shots aren't going down, you got other options. Try to use those options. Like, the real talented, smart players, okay, the three ball's not going in. Let me go mid-range. Let me drive to the basket. Get a bucket. That's the whole thing. Get a bucket. 2 points is better than no points. To me, or try to, you may provoke a foul out of it. You don't know. But, like, getting to the line, get your shots. Like, that's how some of these teams who are beating the Liberty, they got to the line.
Yeah.
The foul calls, like, when you even saw in Chicago, like, Angel Reese practically threw her body up. She had a good game. But there were times where she got the foul.
Yeah.
Even if you're like, come on, girl. You're looking at her, but she provoked a foul. Like, the Liberty, they want to be the aggressors, but they got to be the aggressors from the start to finish. It can't just be in one quarter. It can't just be for these 5-6 minutes in the second quarter and a little bit in the third to kind of stay in the game. And then the fourth quarter, it goes out the window again. And you're down by 20 again. Like, there is this lapse. Now, yes, you got to give credit to Minnesota because Minnesota's defense is quick.
It was very impressive.
They are smothering.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who faces Minnesota this year, they're going to have a really hard time. They are a good team. And I knew that last year. We knew this last year. They're a good team. They didn't make it they didn't get to where they needed to, but I was like, you don't count them out. Like, they are a top team. I still think they're top 5 for me.
I mean, let's not forget that they are coached by Cheryl Reeves, who is, one of the greatest coaches in the history of the WNBA. She's part of the Minnesota dynasty that won, 4 titles. So, she's a great coach. I think people kind of forgot that because, they had a couple of rough years after, that dynasty kind of all like retired and stuff. So they had a couple of rough years. But, she's the mastermind of that team. She's the one that picked the players, this year. And, they have a really young, talented team. So I think we cannot, solely put the blame on the Liberty. Minnesota did their part. But there was definitely areas of concerns, and they're going to have to change that. In a way, it's good that the Liberty get to have, 3 days off per se. I mean, they probably took a rest day today and probably going to train on, Monday and Tuesday and perhaps, Wednesday since they're playing on that day. But I think it's going to be good for them to have a bit of rest and then try to figure things out. Because they're going to have 3 games next week. Wednesday against the Phoenix Mercury, Friday against the Washington Mystics, and then Sunday, 3rd game already of the season against the Indiana Fever, who I'm sure would have, improved by then since the last time we played them. And I feel like the matchup against the Phoenix Mercury is going to be very interesting. The Phoenix Mercury do not have Brittany Griner, but they've decided to have this small ball lineup and just balling, shooting the free like crazy.
You got Copper.
You got Copper, who's like, up a game again if it was even possible to do that. You got Sophie Cunningham that can shoot threes. You got Natasha Cloud that is the general of that team. So I feel like...
And you can't forget Taurasi.
I was gonna forget Diana Taurasi. She's been there for so long, like you forget her, but she seems like she's in good health right now and happy again after a couple of rough years for the team. So they have shooters, so that's gonna be interesting because that's always been an area of concern for the Liberty, perimeter defense. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you also gonna be able to dominate the paint with JJ and Stewie. So that's gonna be an interesting matchup and probably a good team to bounce back after 2 losses. So I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup and hopefully see a different attitude because I felt like there was a real disconnect between what Sandy Brandelo was saying, like, oh, it was the kick in the butt that we needed, but we're going to come out different this game against Minnesota, different attitude, and then it was the same, if not worse than the game against Chicago. So the disconnect between what she's saying and what we saw on the court, I really do hope that they have very truthful conversations, and they're competitors. They want to win. Obviously, I'm sure that, they hated that feeling of losing 2 games in a row. So I'm looking forward to that bounce back on Wednesday. And then you have another team, another home game on Friday against a struggling Washington team at the moment. And then Indiana Fever team on Sunday that's still trying to figure things out. So it is, even though it's 3 games in a very short amount of time, those are teams against whom you can really start bouncing back.
You can, but again, you're going up against... I mean, for Phoenix, that's one thing, but you're also going up against 2 teams that you just beat. And these teams are hungry because they've also faced some big losses, so they're trying to win and they're going to come out hungry and you have to keep your head in the game and you got to stay sharp because even though, these are projected to be the bottom teams not making the playoffs, they're going to be hungry. They want to win, and so they have to keep their head in the game for sure, with these next games. And we'll see, the Phoenix game should be good for JJ and Stewie because you should be able to dominate the paint. But again, you got some good defenders. You got people that are quick with their hands. They'll get in there and try to steal. So you just got to protect the ball. You just got to stay focused and play together. And, if they can play together and stay together, communicate on the court, they should get a win. And I hope these next 3 games are wins. When you see it on paper, you're like, you should win. But they got to stay together because if they don't, the teams will pick them apart. And if people watch that Minnesota game, they'll know how to pick certain people apart.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Felicia. And thank you so much, guys, for listening to our podcast. So our next episode will be after the Phoenix game. We'll be covering that game and hopefully, feel
a bit more joyful.
Yes, thank you.
A bit more hopeful.
You see,
it's 4-2.
It's only the beginning. Yeah.
This is not like we're just in the beginning of the season. We're not even halfway into the season.
Let's not press the panic button just yet.
But they got some things they got to look at. They have some things that they need to look at that are a concern, especially as you go forward and you're about to face the tougher teams.
I think, before we conclude, I would really love to see, the season unlock series from the New York Liberty about, this week that just ended, just to see what it was like and how the team, rallied to, just to get together and rectify this. So
I expected them, but I think the thing for the Liberty is that their first few games, they're expected to win those games. Those teams, young teams, rookies, projected to be probably bottom teams, you expect them. This was the Minnesota game was the first test. Yeah, the first real test. Yeah. In my opinion, for the Liberty. I thought Chicago would be tricky because of Teresa Witherspoon and her coaching, and I know that she's a great coach, and I thought this could be tricky for them. I didn't think they would lose, but obviously they did. I was surprised, a little bit surprised at that. But this was the game that was a true test for them, in my opinion, because I wanted to see them go up against Minnesota, Connecticut, Vegas, you know, certain teams, and Phoenix as well, that I wanted to see them go up against to see, okay, where are we at with this? Like, what are we doing? So we'll see. They got some stuff to work on, though.
We'll see. But as we always say, Felicia,
let's go Liberty!